Mr. President, when I learned that Johnny Isakson would be retiring at the end of the year, I was saddened. I've served with Johnny for a long time, not just here in the Senate where we were both freshman members in 2005, but in the House of Representatives as well. And I've been honored to call him my friend. It's really hard for me to imagine Congress without Johnny. He is, hands down, as I've said, the nicest person ever to serve in the United States Senate. He's a model of decency and graciousness, the kind of person who can fight hard every day for the principles that he believes in without ever developing any rancor toward his political opponents. But he's not just kind and decent, he's also a tremendously effective legislator. He's deeply knowledgeable on a whole range of issues, and he possesses the gift of being able to explain complicated subjects in a very, very clear way. And he gets things done. He doesn't stand around talking about things or playing to the cameras. He just rolls up his sleeves and gets to work. And, Mr. President, he makes things happen. If there was a decency index, and we're all rated on that decency index on a scale of 1 to 10, Johnny would be the perfect 10. Anybody who knows Johnny knows that he has a real passion for people. And he has a real passion for veterans. I've had the opportunity to work with Johnny on a couple of important issues. We served together on the Senate Finance Committee. Tax reform was something to which he brought tremendous knowledge and experience and know-how, talked with great understanding about the complicated issues that we had to deal with when it came to reforming our tax code. His experience was invaluable as we did something that hadn't been done in over 30 years and reformed an outdated, archaic, and tax code that was keeping us non-competitive in the global marketplace. In 2015, he became the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and he spent the past 5 years working tirelessly to increase accountability at the VA, to improve health care for veterans and strengthen veterans' benefits. Over the course of 2017 and 2018, the Veterans Affairs Committee under Johnny passed 25 pieces of legislation, all of which were signed into law. One of those pieces of legislation was the VA Mission Act, which was a bill that made significant reforms to the health care delivery system for veterans to ensure that veterans have access to the care that they need when they need it. Mr. President, I've traveled with Johnny and Diane a number of times over the years, my wife Kimberly as well. But one trip that will forever stand out for me is the trip we took, led by Senator Burr, to a number of World War I and World War II cemeteries in Europe. Of course, the Normandy American Cemetery, the Meuse-Argonne American Cemetery, the Sicily-Rome American Cemetery, as well as several others. We walked battlefields where American soldiers fought and bled, and we visited the graves of young Americans who died on those fields. It was a profoundly moving trip, especially because we were able to visit the graves of soldiers from our home states of South Dakota and Georgia. And while the trip would have been meaningful enough on its own, it was doubly so because Johnny cares so much about those issues. It meant so much to him to visit the places where American soldiers had served and died, to remember their sacrifices and to honor their memory. Mr. President, I'm going to miss working with Johnny. His retirement is a real loss for the institution, and I'm not the only senator who will miss his expertise and dedication, as well as his unfailing graciousness and good humor. The Senate is going to be a poorer place without him. There have been a lot of tributes to Johnny since he announced his decision to retire, and one that I came across that I thought really captured Johnny was published in a Georgia magazine. The author of the piece is a political science professor at Kennesaw State University, and this is what he said, and I'm quoting, "As a political science professor and an administrator, I'm often asked by students if good people can serve in government and keep their integrity. Johnny Isakson is always the first example I come to. It's very often a shocking revelation to most people that good people can, and often do, serve in government for long periods, fight hard for what they believe in, and remain true to themselves and to their principles. And they don't have to sell their souls to do it. It's a great lesson, really." Unquote. I remember being down in Georgia with Johnny a few years ago on the weekend of the Florida-Georgia football game. And we were at one of the celebrations, and I remember being struck by how well known and how well liked Johnny was among the college students who were there. Nowadays, we often hear about young people being disillusioned with politics, but I got to tell you, Mr. President, these students weren't disillusioned with Johnny Isakson. And I think that's because they recognized Johnny's character. They knew that Johnny was somebody who was truly, genuinely committed to making life better for the people of his state, for the people of this country. That here was somebody who had gotten into public service because he genuinely wanted to serve. And interestingly enough, Mr. President, on that trip, we were near the coast of Florida, or of Georgia, and I had to get back to Macon, Georgia. My daughter was competing in a cross-country meet there, and Johnny was kind enough, he was flying back to Atlanta, to take me on that plane and to drop me at Macon, Georgia, so I could watch my daughter compete. Interestingly enough, when he got on the plane to go back from Macon to Atlanta, they had engine trouble. They had to make an emergency landing, and Johnny ended up, I think, having to drive or have somebody, a taxi or somebody, drive him the 100 miles from Macon up to Atlanta in his home. But that's the kind of person he is. He thought it was important for me to be there to see my daughter compete, and was always willing to go out of his way to make it possible for somebody to be able to participate in an event like that, a family event. And that's what I think about when I think about his retirement, Mr. President. I'm sad about his retirement, but I'm happy he's going to have the chance to spend more time with Diane, with his family, his children, and his grandchildren. I've been lucky enough to get to know Diane as well as Johnny over the years, and they are just the same. The warmest, kindest, most gracious, most genuine people that you will ever meet. And I know that after years of sharing him with the people of Georgia and the American people, Diane and the rest of the family will enjoy having Johnny to themselves for a while. After all, somebody has to babysit those 8 beautiful grandchildren. Johnny, the Senate is losing one of its finest members, but you've more than earned your retirement. And I wish you and Diane the very best in your retirement. Pray God's blessings upon you and let you know how much we're going to miss you. Mr. President, I yield the floor.